Hello, everyone. We're just starting the session. May I request all of you to be seated on your seats, please? May I request all of you to be seated, please? Thank you. May I request all the speakers of the session to come to the dais? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rana Singh. I'm the Deputy Director for C40 South and West Asia region. Welcome all of you. And I'll be your master of ceremonies for this inaugural session. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that we are also live streaming this event. We are also live streaming this event through the U20 India platform. And we also have several, participants who've joined us virtually. So this is for all of you just to, just for your information. To begin the session, may I request Ms. Shruti Narayan, the C40 Regional Director for South and West Asia, to give her welcome address.
Thank you, Raina, and good morning to everyone. It's with great pleasure I welcome you on behalf of C40 and our partner Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. It's actually a great moment that we are coming together a day before the World Environment Day, created 50 years ago to discuss environmental protection. And here we are in the midst of unprecedented crisis, which is leading to humanitarian and economic consequences. We are at the record-breaking heat waves that we have seen in India, which is really leading to drought, water security crisis, public health, and many other economic crises. And the last 2 to 3 years, we have seen climate disasters just escalate. Climate disasters are interconnected, and so are we. Climate science is definitive, right? That we are beyond the trajectory of 1.5. And this theme of interconnectedness is embodied and framed very well in our G20 presidency and the Urban 20, of one earth, one family, one future. And I would like to applaud our chair city, Ahmedabad, that has actually outlined 6 priority areas that really puts the city's agenda in the forefront, talking about water security and resilience, accelerating climate finance, looking at catalyzing digital futures, reinventing frameworks for urban governance, and environmentally responsive behaviors. Today, we will be discussing 3 priority areas on accelerating climate finance, looking at water security and environmentally responsive behaviors. Why cities, right? It's no doubt 2% of land mass is occupied by 50% people. We consume in cities about 75% of energy and contributing 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. Cities in that 2% land mass face over 80% risks. If you do the maths, it's clear. We need to focus on cities and take action. And it's actually with, we've had overwhelming response today, and this room is full of experts. And I would actually like to thank our partners who have come together with us to curate 3 sessions, 2 masterclasses, and startups. I would like to thank the National Institute of Urban Affairs, WRI, ICLEI, Climate Bonds Initiative, Janagraha, Omidyar Network that have come together in helping us curate this packed agenda of deliberation. We really believe that cities need to start with data-driven climate action plans that are able to cross-sectorally come up with actions. You can't, intervene to what you can't measure. And we're hoping that these deliberations lead us to really understand tangibly what actions we need to take. And the key post these actions is mainstreaming, which is all about how we can institutionalize these frameworks so that every rupee that the city spends, it's with the lens of climate. We cannot anymore delineate climate from city functioning. It has to be one and the same thing. And we're really hoping that this room full of experts is able to come up with tangible actions, looking at how we can accelerate climate finance, unlock the private sector finances, give feedback into what kind of reforms are required for MDB, and also support leapfrogging technologies, where every climate action plan that's developed looks at resilience, how you can create water securities, and at the end of the day, our shared commitment. What is our role through environmentally responsive behavior to contribute into this? So thank you once again. And we look forward to actually engaging with all of you, not only here, the deliberation, this is just the start for us. And we want to say that this is all about collaboration. We look forward to staying in touch and working with everyone here as we take this agenda forward, because we do not have any option but to take action now. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm going to invite Raina again to invite Mr. Singh on the stage, because he's...
I come on.
You want to introduce him, Raina?
Good morning to all. Welcome to Mr. Kunal, Mr. Mukesh, Madam Shruti Narayan, my colleague, Mr. Srinivas, ladies and gentlemen. There is nothing great to introduce oneself. Me, Kunal, and 4 of us sitting here, we are part of the government. And it becomes difficult because for last 2-3 decades, we are on the receiving end. We have become a sandwich between judiciary, media, and the intelligent people. Judiciary we can handle, media also slightly we can handle. But this intelligent people, it becomes really very difficult. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great occasion. And I don't know the pan-India or the pan-global scenario, but Bangalore, slightly I know because I have been in urban development for last 3.5 years. I have seen Bangalore growing. I'm in Karnataka for last 31 years. When I came, it was 1991. Kunal Saab, the only signal light what we had in 90 was in front of Indian Institute of Science. There was no road where you cannot go on a top gear of the car. So things has just slightly changed that you can't go in top gear in any road of the town. Then there was no issue of urban flooding. Now you have issues of urban flooding in few pockets. Things have improved, but at a great cost. And there are lots of things to do. That is what you are going to discuss. Just one simple observation, and I may be slightly out of place. Whatever happens in Bangalore, it becomes a national or a global news. Just to give you a small example, last year when it rained heavily in the month of September, October, the actual flooding, when I mean actual flooding where the life went out of gear, was only in a area of 2.5 to 3 square kilometers. Not to underestimate the trauma or the problems of those people who were there in 2.5 to 3 kilometers. It is just next to maybe 1.5 to 2 kilometers. But it became such a big global news that even my relatives back home in North India started asking me ki tum office pahunch to pa rahe ho, whether everything is okay. Not to underestimate Mumbai or Chennai. The similar thing happens there. Nobody speaks. With due regards to Kunal Saab comes from Mumbai. And after this, I have a small battle with the Maharashtra only with respect to drinking water. What I'm trying to say, it's good. Let us take it in a very positive, very, very positive note. Nothing wrong. Even if it is becoming a global news, maybe the pressure on the people who are responsible for urban infrastructure, they become relatively more sensitive. Air quality, increasing temperature. I'm told, I don't know. I have read in the Gazette here. In the year up to year 1804, it used to snow in Bangalore. Can anybody believe that? It is from the Gazette here, not my information. So it has been just 200 and odd years, and the climate also has changed. That in the month of what we are, in the month of April, it is relatively hot during daytime. These things were bound to happen, but there are also instruments where we can address most of the issues. Again, not going into many things, clean air, Government of India has been extremely particular. They have been extremely helpful, both on the financing part as well as on the guidance part. We have started working, but again, it's just the beginning. As far as urban transport is there, the government is very particular, but what has happened, most of you must be knowing, the traffic scenario or the number of vehicles which were there on road on pre-COVID time, it has increased in a big number in the post-COVID scenario, because people who were using public transport and who can afford now, they still prefer, they have started preferring going by their own conveyance. And now with the onset of whatever COVID scenario, again in last 1.5 weeks, again we are pushed back. What I am trying to convey to you is that most of the time government, many of the governments, maybe Karnataka, we work without taking the civil society into consideration. Next 30 seconds, what I speak is exactly my own personal views, need not be agitated or conveyed that I am slightly immature or pragmatic. Up to 90s, my observation, the talent or the intelligence was more on the government side, because the exposure then of the civil society, I presume, was not to the extent what is there today. So whatever the people sitting in the government were deciding, it was generally very good, if not the best, and was acceptable to the society just like that. But in last 40, 45 years, what has happened, that the intelligence competence of government, the kind of improvement or maturity or understanding the scenario that should have been there, it has struck a small bottleneck, maybe for different reasons. As I said, there are many reasons to stop people like me or Kunal working, and we get bogged down. And the civil society has gone ahead much than what was available, what is available in the government. So here is a situation where unless we work together, because ultimately the money, the finance, the budget has to come from Government of India, and more so from Government of India, because state governments, we are particular in giving those, because I have to win the elections also. So the money that, the basic money that is coming for the infrastructure improvement, clean air program, or whatever, we are getting excellent support from Government of India. So now is the time where we have to engage ourselves with people who know, and accept also who know more than me, and together we have to work for the betterment of the society. Because a city like Bangalore, if we don't attend what we should have attended yesterday, then we are left behind. Drinking water, I don't know if all of you are from Bangalore, you must be aware, drinking water is a big issue here. Last 4 years has been relatively good because monsoon is good, but there are large parts of Bangalore where we still get water through tankers. Just across Sarjapur Road, I think a population of almost 10 to 15 lakhs, entire dependence is on tanker water only. It's a huge challenge before us. Clean air, as I said, this increasing temperature, because Bangaloreans, the actual Kannadigas, are not used to. We have come from different places and we have polluted the town more, but still they have not seen all these things. Having said that, I know all the questions, but I don't know any of the answers. So we are here to understand the answers and attend to them together. Sorry, I have to leave quickly because I have some drinking water issue with Maharashtra. All the best for this conference. All the best to all of you. Let's work together and let's work quickly, because next 20 days, we are very free. Well, the state government is going for, no, it's not this. The assembly is going for elections. So what I request, what you deliberate today, if in next 2-3 days, somebody can guide me even on telephone, in next 20 days, we can certainly set the ball rolling. Things will not be achieved in a month or two. It is a program. But I promise that Government of Karnataka, the Urban Development Department, under the guidance of Kunal and Manoj Joshi, we are here to implement what best is possible with active and concrete support from people like you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for calling me. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Sir, just before you leave, Mr. Singh, before you leave, may I request if we can have a photo of the panel? Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for setting the context of the conference. Thank you, sir. It is now my privilege to invite Mr. Kunal Kumar, Joint Secretary and Mission Director, Smart Cities, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India, for his address. So over to you.
Very good morning to everyone. I think most of us are enjoying being in Bangalore because of the lovely weather it offers. I'm sure most of us who come from places like Delhi, at least, I just don't want to go back. Thank you, C40, NIUA, all partners. Okay, all partners, along with Mohua, of course, who have worked together, and of course, Bangalore Smart City, the Bangalore team, state government, for putting together this conference, which is, of course, being organized as part of the U20 agenda, but holds a very special, very important place in the context that we stand on at this moment in the journey of our country's development. And all of us here, in some ways or the other, are contributing to that context, whether improving or causing damage are two sides of the same coin. And it's very important that we understand the implications of our actions as we undertake them, because clearly, even as, I was just speaking in the car that there's no medicine which doesn't have a side effect. So all that we do also has good effects as well as bad effects. So our understanding of what we do and the implications that they have, and where do we stand in the context and where do we stand in time as a country is very important for us to understand. And this is not only for our own country, but for every country, every individual, every organization to understand. And therefore, this topic on climate and mainstreaming climate action is very important. India today, let me start with the country's context. We are the fastest growing big economy in the world. From the projections that I have come across, there are some projections which say that we could probably grow at 7% plus CAGR over the next 2 decades. That's a very high rate of growth, which means, our economy may reach from a current $3 trillion GDP to close to $32 trillion GDP by 2047. I don't know if we should congratulate ourselves for becoming the most populous country in the world, but we are, by official figures from the UN Population Fund, now the most populous country in the world. Their projections say that by 2050-55, we should start to reach our peak population of 1.66 billion from the current 1.42 billion. So that when around 2047, when we complete 100 years of independence, having a GDP of 32 trillion and a population of 1.6 billion means, if you divide, it simply says that our per capita income should be around $20,000 per capita. That, of course, is a very high jump from where we are today, which is currently around $2,300 per capita. So it seems to be a 10-time jump in per capita income over the next 25 years that we are going to face. All of us are, by the way, going to create this development and work on this development in all our respective roles to achieve these targets that we have set for ourselves in the Amrit Kaal, as outlined by the Honorable Prime Minister in his Independence Day speech, that India desires to be a developed country. And these are the numbers which explain that journey in some way or the other. Today, we have, again, by many projections, around 460 million people, 46 crore people living in urban areas, cities and towns, which are close to 4,900 in numbers today. Well, these numbers are very, technically India can become a 100% urban country overnight if all state governments decide to notify all the areas as urban. So it is as simple or as difficult as that. Howsoever, we are at the moment, we say we are a country with 35% urban population, with 460 million people living in urban areas. Now, if we change the definition, our definition of urban is very difficult. It is a threefold definition where you should have 400 people per square kilometer, 5,000 at least is a minimum population, and over 75% of our male population is in non-agricultural activity. If you meet these criteria as a place, you are urban in some sense, in the census term of it. But this is a very difficult definition. If you go by the Mexican definition, we are close to 70% urban already. If we go by even the World Bank agglomeration index, there was an agglomeration index that the World Bank had coined in 2009 as part of its World Development Report. And that essentially measures the time it takes for a person to come to the city center. And if it is less than a particular amount of time, then that entire population is covered and called that urban agglomeration. And it was in 2009 that that index said that India is almost 50% urban. So we should be close to 55, 60% urban already by that definition. So these definitions have to be taken with a pinch of salt. By the way, in 1990, India and China reported 26% urbanization in both countries. Today, we report 35% and China says 58%. And because the definitions are different, they cannot be compared. They are not apple-to-apple comparisons. So all that being there, we will have close to 1 billion, 100 crore people living in urban areas, if not by 2047, definitely by 2050. The correlation between this economic growth of 32 trillion and population growth in urban areas has stood the test of time over the past centuries, couple of centuries. And if we just extrapolate that, then this should be the obvious consequence that we will have 1 billion people, which is 100 crore people living in our cities. And we will have a per capita income of $20,000 with $32 trillion economy. All that sounds very good. However, this should not make us complacent as individual cities, because wherever population has expanded at a phenomenal rate, it hasn't expanded at every place at the same rate. So if 500 million people or 50 crore people are going to move into India's cities over the next 2.5 decades, there may even be cities which are completely wiped out of the landscape. So it is not that X city, Y city, everyone will have the same growth. Some will have 10 times more growth than others, and some will have deterioration, which is like today there may be a city of 3 million people and 2047 there may be a city of 3 lakh people. That's going to happen at a very rapid pace going forward because the choices that people have to move are increasing. It is not required of me to be living in city X to work in city X. If I want to work, let's say the best company in the world operates out of city X, theoretically, practically, it's not going to happen if that city is like the one I'm talking about. But let's assume I still don't need to be in city X to work in city X because I can work from anywhere remotely. So this pace of deurbanization of some cities is going to be very fast going forward because of the choices that people have to select the place they want to live. And they are not tied to a location to still create the output that they want to do. So while on the one side, we should be looking at these figures with positive optimism, on the other side, as individual cities, we should think about whether we are going to be one of those who will see growth or are we going to see degrowth going forward. It's going to be different for all of us. So clearly, everything is not going to be rosy in this picture. A lot of negative impact is going to be there. We've seen it in our cities. We've seen. I've had conversations when I've worked in municipal corporations for such a long time. We've had conversations. Well, today's priority is to fix our infrastructure, roads, our water systems. We would look at what happens as a consequence of that in the future, and we don't. I mean, we clearly neglect. For example, we have set up a lot of sewage treatment plants in our cities. We have given them to operate to individual operators, but we hardly are concerned whether those plants actually are discharging the effluent of the quality that we had, wanted as part of the request for, or the tender that we had done. So many other examples of this, we have created. I come from. I've worked in Pune, so we know that when Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission was being implemented, BRT was sanctioned in Pune, and BRT, as a part of the sanction of BRT, it was mandatory that you will also create cycle lanes. And just because it was mandatory to create cycle lanes, some kind of cycle lanes were created, but they were never used. So we're all party to this crime that goes on every time in our cities. And therefore, it is very important for us to not only look at the rosy side, to understand the nuances of what we are doing and is this the right way of doing things? Because clearly the way we are urbanizing now seems to be pretty damaging to the way to the conservation of natural resources, to our ecological resources, ecological diversity, to our biological, the flora and fauna that exists in our country. And these are very important aspects. There seems to be a moral argument behind climate. I'll say this is an economic argument, because if Thane or Mumbai loses its creek or mangroves, or Goa loses its mangroves, or Surat loses its mangroves, or the creek, or the and the plantation there, the natural resources that you have, your economy will have irreparable damage, which will completely transform the view of the city in others' minds, and therefore the economic boom that you see today will start to reverse. So it's not only a moral argument, it's not only an existential argument, it's also an economic argument, and that all of us need to understand. On other statistics on the GHG front, how much time do you give me? Because I thought a couple of speakers are not there, so I'll fill in. Yeah. Okay. So on the GHG emissions, I think the world as a whole, because we need to just understand this perspective. The world as a whole emits close to 50 gigatons CO2 equivalent every year. The overall is roughly this much, of which 60% is emitted only by 10 countries. And there are 100 countries in the world which emit only 3% of the overall GHG emissions. So clearly, again, there is a lot of unbalance there. And India is number 3 on that list after China and US. We are the 3rd largest emitters of GHG in the world. However, it's not because all of us are very extravagant GHG emitters. If you see the world average of how much per capita GHG emission is, it is 6 tons per capita per year. India is at 2, whereas the EU is somewhere at 8, China is somewhere at 8. I think EU is somewhat less than China, and US is close to 16, which is the highest in the world. So we are roughly 1/8 of United States, 1/4 of China. So we should be happy about it. In one sense, well, yes, historically, we haven't really created the mess that these countries have. It is also related to the development, the current state of development that we are in. But please remember, our future is 500 million people moving into cities, 10 times growth in per capita GDP. And all that is not going to happen without us pushing economic activity, infrastructure development, and therefore this number is clearly going to go much higher. And it's our ability to control the negative side, which is while we increase our GDP and increase our per capita GDP, increase prosperity, increase well-being and happiness for all, we have to work to control on the other side, the negative side, which is the GHG emissions and a disastrous use of fossil fuels, etc., etc. And unless we are able to do both these things, and we are able to juggle between these 2 important priorities, the quality of our development in the future will be too much, will be very hazardous, not only for ourselves, but for the entire world. Because if you look at the number of people who are going to move into urban areas across the world in these next 25 years, close to 2.5 billion roughly is what I know, of which 500 million in India, and about 500 million to some close to that will be Nigeria and Indonesia and Vietnam. So these 4 or 5 countries will have 90% of people moving into urban areas. And if we can't fix the way we operate our urban areas, and we can't fix the way we run our cities and create infrastructure and economic growth, and we do it in the same way that these countries in the West have done in the past, which is by exorbitant amounts of GHG emissions, and that damage will be very irreparable for the world. And as the future of humanity will be at stake, because all of us know about the IPCC reports, and all of us know about the climate conventions. All of us know about COP26 and COP25 and what has been talked about. So I don't want to go into those details. This is for us as as individuals, as organizations, as government leaders, as civil society, as partner organizations, everyone in the field, to be able to work in a way that we are able to control the negative effects of our growth going forward. The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. I don't know how many of you have knowledge about that. That probably is a guiding document, an intent, and a very strategic document about how we as a country can work towards better urban areas, especially related to climate change. The Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework was launched about 3 years back and has been successful in guiding and getting people to converge on what kind of climate actions we should be looking at in cities. Over the last, I think the last iteration where 126 cities participated, I have some figures, for example, we found that 10 cities today in the country meet more than 15% of their energy needs through renewable sources. Around 88 of those 126 cities have actually converted all their street lights into LED, which is efficient street light. 21 cities have actually attained the service level benchmark for availability of public transport. 21 out of 126 is not big, but at least now we know what is happening. So we have this data. 14 cities have more than 35% of the road network with NMT infrastructure. 38 cities have formulated strategies for budget allocation on climate issues. 35 cities have good quality city disaster management plans. Now, this number also needs to increase because, as per one of the reports, the Global Climate Risk Index 2021 says India is 7th most vulnerable to, these natural disasters. So we have seen a lot of action happening in cities, and these numbers speak that there is a groundswell. There is a lot of application of mind, understanding, and linkage between climate issues and infrastructure development and services in cities that is happening. And this is promising. I have been in the urban sector for the last 10 years directly. 2014, I was in Pune, and now it's 2023. I've seen the dialogue mature a fair bit. Now the space of dialogue maturing has to increase, and which is why people who are here have to become ambassadors and have to go back and understand. And I think the best people who can make us understand these things are our own children, because they are more sensitive to these issues, because the world of the future is their world, and we should not really create an intergenerational mess by consuming resources in a way that their world of tomorrow is very difficult for them to live in. So we have to look at the guiding light, R5, the Panchamrit that Honorable Prime Minister mentioned in COP26. We have to start working towards a lot of different things in the future, and 7-8 action points for all of us. I think, how do we localize climate action? If I am a city X, if I am Pune, if I am Rajkot, if I am Chandigarh, how do I create my own COP26 targets? How do I create my target contribution to the national target? How do I bring stakeholders to work together on a common agenda for fulfillment of COP26 targets for the city of Chandigarh, not for India? We don't talk about India, talk about our city. So what are those things that should be part of that? Then how do we build capacity in our cities to understand the nature of climate change, understand the nature of the work which is required on climate action? This is something that we have all got to do as a collaborative. Of course, there is a Climate Smart Cities Alliance, there is a Climate Center for Cities, but each city needs to develop its own capacity building framework. And it's about getting more and more people. It's about also getting civil society, students in schools, building capacity on these issues. So it's not only about building capacity in government, it's a 360-degree capacity building effort that needs to happen. We need to have better templates for cities to action climate. For example, are our cities able to do greenhouse gas accounting? Yes, there are tools, but are they able to use it? Is it only about creation of tools? No, because there are a lot of tools which exist. It's also about adoption and understanding. Energy accounting, green buildings, climate action plans, a lot of SOPs will need to be created, DPRs will need to be created. And these are real messy things. It's good to talk about climate on a different planet, but when you come down to actually working on the street, these are the things that are required to action them. And these are the things for which capacity will have to be ingrained in city officials. Then, of course, we have to nudge community and organizational behavior through incentives. It's good to talk about you should be taking sustainable modes of transport, et cetera, but I have to be in a meeting in 20 minutes and you can't tell me to wait in a bus stop for 30 minutes. I have to take my car and go there. So if you can't create a system, if you can't create a city designed to support sustainable outcomes, if you can't create a system which incentivizes selection and choice of sustainable outcomes, we will never be able to nudge community or organizations towards that. You know, one of the best learnings I had in Amsterdam when I was there and for about 4-5 days, trying to learn about the cycling culture. It was just this one conversation that I had when the cyclist said, well, nobody needs to tell me to adopt cycling as a sustainable mode, etc., etc. It's just because going from point A to point B takes 32 minutes by car and 16 minutes by cycle that I cycle. If it was the reverse, I would have never cycled. So it's not that, you know, mentally there's a more spiritual or a different kind of mindset that, the people there have. It's just that it's purely logical to take that mode of transport. Can we create cities like that? It will require tweaking our policies, our infrastructure, the incentives, congestion pricing, parking charges. All of us have been talking about these things. This is the time to action all that. Then, of course, we have to look at access equality. Climate is also an inclusion debate. Because as he was talking about tankers, Sir was talking about tankers. Tankers are mostly used by people in slums. So it's an inclusion debate. How do you create access equality? I keep giving this example in many of my speeches that we have a mobile phone, which is such an affordable and excellent equipment for communication. It is affordable. It is available at very cheap prices, as well as a very excellent medium of communication. So it's not that things cannot be created excellent without being affordable. So can we create the mobile phone equivalent in housing, in water, in sanitation, solid waste management? What is that? And this doesn't require incremental switch from what we have learned in the past from the West. This requires new templates, new models. We need original thinkers. We don't need people who come out with best practices. Hey, this is the best practice in X country and let us follow that in India. It's not going to work. We need original thinkers. We need people who can create new templates, who can create mobile phones for these sectors. We also need to broaden the agenda. It's not only about climate, is not only about flora, fauna, and green buildings. It's also about cycling. It's also about walking. It's also about smart nutrition. It is also about creating neighborhoods where people love to go to vibrant urban spaces, make people go out, love their city, enjoy the spaces. It's only then. It's also a good policy which came out in Telangana only last week, I think, is called the cool roof policy. States have to be proactive enough to come out with specific targets and create these policies, simple tweaks, which can create a massive impact as far as, because if you look at India's growth over the next 20-25 years, it's said that we will create a Chicago every year. And I was having a conversation 10 days back with some colleagues from Germany, from their environment ministry. And they said, well, 90% of the buildings that will stand in Germany in 2050 already exist today. But that number for India is 30%. 30% of India 2050 years before you today, 70% is yet to happen. Now imagine those buildings not going the green way. So looking at these things, how do we actually broaden the agenda to include all these things and start talking about them in detail, create capacity, technical manpower, equipment, and research and strategy around these issues is very important. And of course, while we all do all this, I think climate finance is going to be a crucial area of work. Climate finance is a very muddled term. It seems to be we tend to link it with green finance, sustainable finance, low carbon finance, but it's much more and much more different than that. It's important to demystify this term. How can I as a city understand climate finance? I have created my city action plan. I have 10 things to do. I have budgetary constraints. How can I access the world of climate finance? What all can I do? What are the new instruments available? What are the different ways in which the world can support me? This is the kind of dialogue we need to start having with cities. And each of the cities need to start having with their own partners and create capacity to have these dialogues. So I think these are essential areas of work. And all of us here should not miss this opportunity today to understand a lot of the ask that is there on us as individuals and organizations that we lead. But also we have to understand that, it starts from each of us, our own choice of sustainable modes, etc., and our own leadership and our own courage to take these issues to political, to get these issues on the agenda of the political economy as officers and as civil society organizations, and to be convincing in our arguments. And not only put a moral argument, but also put an economic, social, and inclusive argument so that we are able to bring a lot of other stakeholders on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for really setting the context. You have given us a lot of food for thought. And as we, go through the discussions over the course of the day, you also talked about capacity needs, and we have two very strategic master classes, as Shruti was mentioning earlier. We hope that they'll be really useful and focus on some of these points. So our next speaker is Mr. Abhay Thakur, the G20 Sous Sherpa and Additional Secretary at the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. He's not able to join us in person today, but he's shared a recorded video message, and may I request if the message can be played, please.
And delegates of C40 and UCLG cities, esteemed representatives and delegates of C40 and UCLG cities, my senior colleagues from the Government of Karnataka, colleagues from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Ms. Shruti Narayan, Regional Director, India C40 cities, distinguished delegates from India and abroad. I am delighted to be able to address, albeit in virtual mode, this conference today on mainstreaming climate action in cities. It gives me immense pleasure to talk to you about how multilateral collaboration and coordination can help effectively respond to and deal with the impacts of climate change while ensuring equitable, inclusive, and sustainable solutions for a resilient future. The exchange of ideas and information among cities can help enhance planning capacity, carry out development projects, and also find ways of leveraging climate finance to mainstream climate action. Friends, the theme of India's G20 presidency, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, or One Earth, One Family, One Future, affirms the value of all life and takes note of an increasingly interconnected planet. Our logo in our national flag colors reflects growth amid challenges and our pro-planet approach. Together, the logo and the theme convey a message of striving for just and equitable growth for all in the world and represents a uniquely Indian approach to our G20 presidency of living in harmony with nature. I'm very happy to be able to say to you today that probably the Indian G20 presidency has had the widest reach and widest spread across any country so far in any G20 presidency. Just a couple of days ago, I was in Banaras, the holy city of Varanasi, for the 100th G20 meeting. I am happy to inform that so far we have already covered 41 cities across India for a number of our G20 meetings, whether they are from the Sherpa track, finance track, or engagement groups. We are aiming to cover at least 60 cities for all our G20 meetings this year, as well as another, let's say, about 20 to 25 cities, which will be covered for excursions or tours. All in all, given this widespread of and geographical coverage of India's G20 calendar, I think there could have been no better occasion, no other presidency in which U20 and C40 issues could be discussed in so much depth, with so much real and practical experience to benefit from. The G20 presidency is a great opportunity for India and also for all the delegates to share and learn from the Indian growth model, to be able to provide ideas to us and an opportunity for us to tell you about how our technological progress, our economic progress, along with our traditional and cultural heritage, is being leveraged and utilized for a holistic growth, taking everyone along. Cooperation among G20 countries is essential to build economic resilience through resource security, achieve sustainable development, improve ecosystems and biodiversity via conservation and restoration, and combat climate change. This year, the G20 countries are aiming to renew the spirit of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. And in this sense, I would like to highlight a few points particularly from the G20 Secretariat point of view, which could be of use, of relevance to this gathering today. First and foremost, we think that a sense of place, a sense of belongingness that is present in every city should be highlighted to bring out its unique local flavor and to highlight the distinctiveness or unique character of particular localities and regions. If we have to build cities of tomorrow, they must all have a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of uniqueness to which people can relate to. Similarly, we would also focus on highlighting the lessons learned by India, particularly a number of urban infrastructure projects that are going on, such as the Central Vista, which is preserving the old and bringing in the new. In this context, let me also mention some of the very important projects that have been undertaken by Government of India, both to bring about sustainable urban development and also to preserve the cultural heritage of India. For instance, as I mentioned, I returned only yesterday from the city of Varanasi, where the Kashi Vishwanath corridor has been developed and has brought a new life and a new attractiveness to the city, while also preserving its cultural heritage, from putting up a tent city for tourists, from building the entire corridor, and promoting sustainable tourism is what is the highlight of this very impressive work done by the Government of India. Similarly, not too long ago, I visited in Ujjain, where the Mahakal corridor has similarly been built to provide both sustainable tourism, economic activity, as well as support the development of the city, economic development of the city and its people. I would also like to highlight the importance of strategically approaching investments and planning when we get into urban infrastructure, whether it is metro, whether it is airport, whether it is the ports, whether it is the circular economy, whether it is procurement based on preferring circular economy approach, whether it is waste to wealth. All of these aspects are getting more and more important, particularly in a large developing country like India, but it has relevance for the whole world. I would also like to add here the very important priority of lifestyle for environment that has been highlighted by India during its G20 presidency, which aims to promote sustainable lifestyles by bringing together the development and climate agenda with the overarching aim of resolving and easing growth imbalances through collaborative actions of various stakeholders with a special focus on individual actions and behavior. It is a comprehensive approach focused on both the demand and supply sides, highlighting the importance of individual actions for climate change on one hand, by promoting thoughtful and purposeful consumption to preserve the environment and the Earth's natural resources for current and future generations, and on the other hand, nudging markets, industries, and governments to create enabling environment to sustain these environmentally conscious choices. India's ongoing G20 presidency includes broad priority areas of interest, such as matters relating to inclusive and resilient growth, progress on sustainable development goals, green development and lifestyle for environment, technological transformation and public digital infrastructure, reforming multilateral institutions, women-led development and international peace and harmony. We are also emphasizing the importance of adequate international finance and technological support as critical enablers for achieving SDGs, climate goals, and sustainable energy transitions. One of the priorities that is being discussed today is on environmentally responsible behavior. India at the G20 is aiming to promote lifestyle for environment, which inter alia focuses on responsible consumption and production, i.e. SDG 12, which is bringing together the development and climate agenda as well as a comprehensive approach focused, as I said, on both demand and supply. At the recent foreign ministers meeting last month in New Delhi, the outcome document once again welcomed the COP27 decision relating to funding arrangements for responding to loss and damage. This is a significant win for the developing countries, and India during its G20 presidency tenure is prepared to stand steadfast in amplifying the voice and concerns of the global south and developing countries. I would recall here that the Urban 20 met for the first time this year at Ahmedabad, the U20 chair city, during its inception meeting in February 2023. And there was a reinforcement of the pivotal role that cities play in the growth stories of their countries. The group highlighted common challenges of climate emergency, water justice, revisiting governance systems and policy frameworks, integrating technology with environment, localizing urban solutions, and creating green jobs as part of an equitable climate economy. Climate change affects all, but it is expected to hit developing countries the most. Its potential effects on temperatures, precipitation patterns, sea levels, and frequency of weather-related disasters pose risks for agriculture, food, water supplies, as well as on the lives and livelihoods of peoples in developing countries. Hence, tackling the climate crisis requires both mitigation and adaptation, and G20 helps provide a platform to develop workable solutions for issues of global concern through dialogues, discussions, and consensus. The UN has declared this decade as a decade of action to develop and achieve progress towards the sustainable development goals. The decade is also witness that global issues of economy, climate, human settlements, health, and multiple other crises are also issues of urban areas. Given the contribution of cities to the productivity of nations and the world, it is crucial that they play a pivotal role in developing effective solutions to pressing and interlinked global issues. At the recently held G20 Sherpa meeting in Kumarakom earlier this month, what was highlighted was that climate concerns and development finance are in fact two sides of the same coin. There is a need for recognizing the increasing inseparability of the two. Climate finance cannot be tackled in isolation, but it should be interlinked with developmental goals. Cities can create enabling environments to ensure long-term flow of financing by investing in climate resilient infrastructure, promoting green bonds, in turn mobilizing resources for green infrastructure, build capacities in cities to attract and access climate finance for climate action, both from public and private sector, bring about reform in institutions and regulatory frameworks to protect and revitalize vulnerable water resources, and much more. Therefore, climate smart and adaptive infrastructure is a must as we build new cities or rebuild existing ones to become cities of tomorrow. Colleagues, civil society plays a pivotal role in shaping public policy that is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable, as it gives voice to the concerns of the people, including subject experts and concerns of those at the grassroots. Efforts made by governments can be multiplied with the guidance and support of civil society. As participants of the Urban 20 Engagement Group, as participants of the C40 and the UCLG, I hope today all of you would actively utilize the platform to put forth your technical expertise and take forward the deliberations in order to highlight or suggest key policy actions, strategies, and recommendations to be able to help guide the G20 Sherpa track to shape an inclusive, ambitious, action-oriented, and decisive leaders' declaration this year. The whole priority of cities for tomorrow, financing urban infrastructure, and sustainable lifestyles and development is a central priority, a key priority for India's G20 presidency. And it is in this context that today's deliberations are especially important for us in the G20 Secretariat. I once again wish you all meaningful and substantive deliberations for the benefit of India's G20 presidency, for the benefit of the entire G20, and to move forward carrying everyone along.
We thank the Su Sherpa for his video message. We'll now break before the next session, but before that, I just want to inform the participants that we'll be doing all the plenary sessions in this hall. The master classes are organized in the library, which is on the second floor. And we also have the startup zone in the foyer just outside. So please, take the opportunity to interact with our startups over tea, and they'll be here until the end of the lunch. And with that, I'll thank all the speakers for this session, and we'll close and resume at 11:15. Thank you.
Check. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. We are starting session 1 now, which is on unlocking finance for climate in cities. So we have a very high level panel for this session. I think I'll first just start by introducing our panelists. We have Ms. Shilpa Kumar, who's partner Omidyar Network India. So Shilpa is a partner at Omidyar Network, a social impact investment fund. Shilpa provides overall leadership, including strategy and investment across the areas of digital society, advancing cities, property, inclusivity, and work in Equal Opportunities Lab. She's an alumnus of Indian Institute of Management, Kolkata. So I invite Shilpa to please come up on the dais. She's the moderator and chair of this session. Yeah, and along with her, we have Mr. N.K. Singh. He's the chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission. He's joining us online. So Mr. N.K. Singh is the former Indian Administrative Service Officer and economist. He's the current chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission. He's a senior bureaucrat. He was a senior bureaucrat who served on the Planning Commission of India and held positions as the Union Expenditure and Revenue Secretary and Additional Secretary Economic Affairs with international organizations such as the World Bank, IMF, and UNDP. We have with us also panelist Mr. Abbas Jha. He's the practice manager, climate change and disaster risk management, South Asia region with the World Bank. So Mr. Abbas Jha is the practice manager for climate change and disaster risk with the World Bank. He leads the global team working on infrastructure lending, technical assistance and advisory services within the World Bank. And our third panelist is Mr. Hari Prasad Hegde, founder partner Edina Capital. He's the founding partner at Edina, whose vision is to generate substantial wealth, investing in businesses that create positive climate and societal outcomes. So I'd like to invite all our panelists, please, onto the stage. So without further ado, I'll request and invite Mr. N.K. Singh to first give his opening remarks. He's joining us online via Zoom from Delhi. So I'd like to thank Mr. N.K. Singh for making the time for this. Over to you, sir.
Hello? 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 Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, please.
But,
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
I don't follow the structure of your whole thing. I mean, very confusing. Your software is exceedingly weak. I can't see a soul apart from you. I can't see who the moderator is. Can you get a little more organized before you invite people? What do you want me to do?
Sir,
who is moderating
can
the
you
session?
see us?
Who is moderating my session, please?
Mr. Singh, good afternoon. My name is Shilpa Kumar.
Yes.
We actually have the room quite full over here.
Good.
I think the organizers are not able to maybe show you the audience at this stage, but I think everyone's quite ready to hear you. I could, of course, start with a few remarks, but we just thought, given that the session is starting late, C40 suggested maybe we should hear your plenary address first. And while they try and give you a glimpse of the audience, may I request if you could start, sir?
Well, let me start by thanking the organizers for this session on unlocking finances and cities. It's a subject which is of great significance, both from the viewpoint of India's growth strategy and equally from the viewpoint of being integral to our leadership of the G20 summit. I say the latter because issues, for instance, of lowering fossil fuel footprint, improving efficiency, and enhancing the total factor productivity, there is no doubt that the urban centers and urbanization holds the great key to India moving to a higher growth trajectory. Now, in saying this, of course, let me say that as the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, we gave our report, and that report was accepted fully by government. And it had a robust chapter on the entire process, procedures of the urbanization in India. We concluded that urbanization in India is much more robust, much more significant than some data may bring out. In fact, estimates on what exactly is the total urbanization have varied from a modest one of 33% to around 50% or so. There is also now preponderant evidence that unless we plan for viable, credible financing module for urbanization, this great endeavor of India to use urbanization as an engine of growth will get staggered. Now, let me point out to a few considerations. The 15th Finance Commission, which I have the privilege to chair, we devoted a special attention to factors leading to the urbanization process. Now, let me set the context by saying that under the Constitution, the issues are relating to urbanization fall directly in the domain of the states. Let me explain. After the constitutional amendments, which introduced the third tier as an important engine of growth, the finance commissions in general are expected to only recommend the improvement of the consolidation fund of the state governments for enabling them to fund fully the third tier of government. Indeed, we'll give you a little historical background. When the 14th Finance Commission, which was the previous commission which worked on this issue, enhanced the share of the states significantly from 32%, which was earlier, to 42%, it was expected that this would provide the states the adequate flexibility and the room for being able to fund fully the processes and the requirements of the third tier of government. But notwithstanding this substantial increase, unfortunately, several things happened. First and foremost, challenge is that the basic intent of transferring the 3 Fs, functions, functionaries, and finance, from state governments to the third tier did not materialize. So this is one significant handicap which we faced when we took over the assignment of the 15th Finance Commission. Second, state governments have been particularly lax in constituting, and more than constituting, acting with alacrity on the recommendations of the State Finance Commission. The State Finance Commission have a special responsibility in regard to the third tier of government, which includes, of course, the urban local bodies, municipalities. So, unfortunately, the picture which we found was a rather mixed one, where there were therefore failures not only on account of the lack of alacrity in the transferring of the functions, powers, and functionaries to the third tier, but also in the constitution of the State Finance Commission, which was central. So we had very frankly 2 options. Our option was to go by the rule book and to say that till the state governments get their act together, we are not obliged to provide any additional finances to the third tier whatsoever, which included the urban local bodies. But the Commission and I particularly took a slightly different view. I felt that the fact of the inability or the tardiness of the state government should not have consequences in a deleterious way for the third tier as a whole. So far from cutting it down significantly, we decided to enhance the allocations to the third tier in a significant way. And in doing so, we tilted the balance somewhat in favor of the urban local bodies than the rural local body, changing the formula which prevailed earlier, recognizing that urbanization is an important engine of growth. We also found that in giving the large amount of resources to urban local bodies, we classified cities into two broad categories. Category one, what we call the million plus cities, where we had a challenge fund for the million plus cities, and then cities with less than 1 million. So in respect of million plus 50 cities, we provided a robust financial requirement, which was fully accepted by the central government by way of grants over a 5-year period. And we expected that with this, they will hope to get their finances significantly in order. We also found that in order to encourage the means of providing sustainable finance, after the GST came into being in 2017, a number of areas which provided finances to the urban local bodies had been subsumed in the GST. And many urban local bodies complained to us that they had no idea of receiving quantums of money which would be adequate to serve their needs. So here is the dilemma. On the one hand, finance commissions are not the body. It is the state government, which is the entity to provide finances to the urban local bodies. On the other hand, when we provided the finances, we found that on the GST, of which state is a beneficiary, small quantities went to the urban local bodies. So we did decide to take some special steps on how to significantly enhance the financial capability and sustainability of urban local bodies. We recommended that property tax in India, which has been rather in a minuscule form. In fact, India is one of the few examples where property tax as a percentage of GDP still constitutes a very negligible proportion. And that this is an area which has a huge exponential multiplier effect. We therefore decided not only to recommend the property tax with a reserve floor fixation of property tax, we decided to index the property tax with the rate of growth of states' gross domestic product. So property tax are now a performance criteria if any state government wishes to avail of this property tax, avail of the grants which we have given for urban local bodies. There are two important conditions. One important condition is the procedure for audited accounts, and then accounts which are contemporary to be provided. And the second important performance criteria is the imposition of a property tax with a floor tax and with a program ahead of it and indexed to the state's growth of the state GDP. We believe that with this and with the use of some of the other instruments which we have suggested, municipal bodies can look to other kinds of financing arrangements if they become viable, bonds, market-oriented borrowings. But for that, of course, they have to keep their finances in a manner which enables them to take on this obligation. And for enabling the state governments to allow a contingent liability on the state consolidated fund for urban local bodies, it is necessary that the issue of other user charges and property tax is assigned the importance which we do so. To sum up, I think since my time is coming to an end, I have the following suggestions to make. One, alacrity of acting on state finance commissions and constituting them. Two, alacrity in transferring the powers, functionaries, and functions to the third tier, alacrity in following the procedures for the imposition of property tax and other user charges embedded, and alacrity in terms of therefore improving the overall finances of urban local bodies for enabling them to access market borrowings and other forms or ways in which they can substantially improve their capacity. And finally, a robust procedure for monitoring this as we go along. There are excellent examples in the country, and I think that some states have taken forward steps, others have lagged behind, and these could serve as best examples which they could replicate in their own state government and in their own urban local bodies. So I think that I would commend you to read not only the 15th Finance Commission's operational recommendation, which I have summarized, but commend you to look at creative avenues for improving the overall finances and the capacity of urban local bodies. Thank you very much for enabling me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. It was really a privilege to hear you and to have you kick off this session. There were a number of things I took away, but let me just mention three. One is, of course, the fact that the urban reform process is never easy. And as you said, that even when policies and regulations were in place, sometimes, implementation does not move as smoothly. And I think the way the Finance Commission approached incentives within what you did, I think it's a really important, thing for all of us to think about as we go into this session today. The second thing which I really took away is the need for alacrity or speed. And I think you put it really well when you directed our attention onto the 3 or 4 things that you suggested we should focus on. And of course, you ended up with finance. And indeed, that is going to be the main area of focus for today, for this session. And while we, kind of proceed with the rest of the session, I do again want to thank you on behalf of the other plenary speakers, the organizers, and the audience for making the time to address us today. Thank you again, Dr. Singh.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you, those remarks. I think you summed up exceedingly well as a moderator the gist of what I said, but do add a few more things which I said, namely the fact of property tax and the need for proper audited accounts and improving finances for increasing access to market resources. Urban local bodies would become less dependent on finance commission and state governments and have their own finances in order, have a long way to go in adding to India's growth momentum. Thank you very much for summing up some of the things which I said. It was my privilege to speak to you and to this very distinguished audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think while we, reflect on what Dr. Singh said, may I just re-articulate how the session will flow. So we have 2 plenary speakers who will continue what Dr. Singh started. And after that, we will get into the panel discussion. And so without further ado, Benji, maybe we have Mr. Shah.
So I want to begin by thanking the organizers, C40 and Shruti, for inviting me. And I also want to say what a great privilege it is for me to be on the same panel as Mr. N.K. Singh. He's my senior from the Bihar cadre. I also belong to the Bihar cadre of the IAS. And not only that, we also come from the same district of Bihar, which is Purnia. So it's a great privilege for me to be there with him. I want to use, I have 7 minutes, right? How much time do I have? Yeah, so, okay, 10 minutes. So that's even better. So I want to use my time to make 3 or 4 points. But before I do that, I want to emphasize that in terms of unlocking private finance for climate action in cities, I think one of the key factors is good policy. And in fact, I want to give one example of that, which is not related to climate, but again, which is an area which Mr. N.K. Singh actually played a very pivotal role, which is technology. These mobile phones that you see and really the explosion that we've seen in India. India has amongst the lowest mobile data rates in the world. And a large part of this can be attributed to the new technology policy of 2000, where we essentially moved from a license arrangement to a revenue sharing arrangement. That was a very bold policy that really unlocked this revolution that we are seeing, and everything, including Aadhaar and biometrics, everything flows from that. So I do really want to commend the bureaucrats of that time, including Mr. Singh, who really took those actions. Now, coming to the points for today, the agenda item. So I want to make really 4 points on climate action and private finance. So the first relates to mitigation. So I think India's solar story is a great success story. And I think I don't need to elaborate. This audience is well aware of what happened. But the question is, what are the action lessons we can take from that success and replicate it in other sectors like wind or energy storage? Now, if you look at, for example, the Rewa solar park, which is a really big success story, IFC, and my colleague Rajesh Miglani from IFC is here. IFC played the role of the transaction advisor for Rewa. And I think the key lesson you can take from the success of that is really a careful elaboration of the risks that are inherent in big projects. And you really need to unbundle those risks carefully and allocate those risks to the party that's best able to bear it. So I think Rewa has that lesson for us. And I think we really need to transfer those lessons to areas like wind and battery storage. The other lesson I would say from Rewa is to have a good transaction advisor, neutral, internationally credible from the very beginning. I think that is also and we are seeing some of these successes in other sectors like e-buses. I think CESL in India has done a really good job in procurement of e-buses. And it really holds the promise of positioning India as a major manufacturing hub, not just for e-buses, but for other climate finance related. So that was my first point. The second point I want to make is about adaptation. Now, adaptation is not as, how should I say, tractable as mitigation in terms of attracting private finance. The reason for that is that adaptation is very localized and customized. So it's hard to kind of scale that up at a portfolio level. That said, I think really there are two things that we need to do to have effective adaptation finance in India. One is much more widespread availability of good quality data. And what do I mean by that? So for example, weather data. If you want to have, say, good insurance, good weather data is an essential precursor to that. I think IMD is a very, very capable, the India Meteorological Department is a very capable body, but there's much more we need to do, especially for more granular sort of district level weather data. So that's number one. The second is the public investment framework. So when we talk about adaptation, normally we think of it as extra additional cost. So if you want to build a house that's resilient to, say, flooding, you need to, say, build it at a higher level. So that's a delta of a cost. But my argument is that you need to change the way we think about investments. So if, for example, if you start thinking of a life cycle cost of an asset, then that investment, that expenditure instead turns into an investment, because you end up actually saving costs by taking into account these unforeseen risks that come about as a result of adaptation. So for me, adaptation finance, I think the big way to unlock it is really to use public investment and to change the way we think about public investments to do so. So that was my second point. The third point I want to talk about is cooling. And the reason I'm taking this as a separate category is cooling cuts across both adaptation and mitigation. So in December last year, the World Bank released a major report on cooling in India. And if you just Google, World Bank cooling India, you'll find that report online. So we found a number of very interesting things. One is that we predict that India will be amongst the first countries where in certain areas, the heat will cross the limit of human survivability. And we already saw that in some areas last year when we had that brutal heat wave. There were parts of Rajasthan and Gujarat which crossed that limit. So South Asia is going to be hit hard, and I don't think we are really prepared for that. So there are lots of investments that to be needed, and we need to take action on that. But the more interesting aspect to this is that we found that there's a $1.6 trillion market potentially that can be unlocked for things like green refrigerants, super efficient air conditioners, so highly efficient ceiling fans. And India, again, can position itself as a manufacturing hub of these. So there is a huge potential on cooling. Now, related to that is, again, the point of data and investments. So if you look at many major cities in India, they have their heat action plans. Ahmedabad is a good example of that. But there's really no money behind that. So that's the other part of it, that we really need to start thinking about how we invest in these heat action plans, and especially with a view of the most poor and vulnerables. So when heat hits, the people who die typically are the old and the vulnerable, or the very, very young. So we need to have this in mind when we are preparing for this. And for example, laborers, agricultural laborers, they cannot go out and work in the sun. So then how do you protect their income? So some kind of social protection scheme would also be needed. So that was the third point. The fourth and final point I want to make is sort of in the bucket of things that still need to be worked out, work in progress. So here I want to highlight three things. So if we are talking about attracting foreign investments, especially into this space of climate in India, one of the big risks that needs to be hedged is the foreign exchange risk. Now, if you go into the market and buy say a dollar-rupee hedge, I think the most you can get is 8 to 10 years. And Rajesh, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's sufficient, because these projects typically have a life cycle of, say, 20, 30 years longer. So you need a lot better ways to hedge risk. There's some very interesting experiments underway globally. So there's an exchange in Amsterdam, which I think AIG, the bank AIG, helped set up. But it's a consortium, and I think IFC is also a partner in that, called CTX. They are experimenting in innovative ways to how to hedge this foreign exchange risk. I think we need more of those such experiments, because foreign exchange risk is a really big issue that needs to be tackled. The second is the macroeconomic risks. And again, I think India is lucky that we are one of the few countries that is not facing a macroeconomic crisis or a debt crisis. If you look across the world, many, many countries are facing this. And if you look across our neighborhood, most of our neighbors have an IMF program. And again, kudos to Mr. Singh, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Y.V. Reddy, the people who were there during the 91 crisis, that it is their sagacity that has led us to this place where we are in a relatively good place, macroeconomic speaking. But the reason I'm emphasizing this is that this is going to be a big hurdle going forward in attracting private capital. So I really think that India needs to be very, very prudent moving ahead on the macroeconomic. And then the final point I want to say is about data. We need much more good, credible, high quality public data that is put out in the public domain. And here I want to give you an example of Singapore. So Singapore has this API exchange called Apex, whereby they put a lot of public data in the public domain, and developers can build APIs off those, of that public data. I think that's a very, very good model. And I think, India certainly, but, most countries should have sort of open data as a default, because by putting good, high quality data in the public domain, it's like a global public good. A lot of people benefit from that. So with that, let me stop. And again, a big thanks to the organizers, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Hariprasad Hegde, founder partner Arena Capital, to give his opening remarks, please.
Let me begin with thanking the organizers for this opportunity to come and share my views on unlocking private capital for climate action in cities. Right. We are all, I think, go back a decade plus, we've all been debating on the supply side constraint, right? we are living in a rapidly urbanizing world. We'll get to about 70% urban by 2050. The need of capital for infrastructure globally is about 5.5 trillion. The flow is only 50%. And despite the huge gap, private capital has sort of stagnated about $180 billion, and only 25% of it flows into developing world, right? So I think this discussion has been on for quite some time. But my attempt here would be to try and, try and unbundle the demand side. I don't think we should sort of bundle everything together, infrastructure, and there are many other small but many opportunities to attract private capital to deal with climate action, right? So let me sort of pick up some priority areas for cities and place some possible options, right? So let me unbundle the demand side at two levels, right? How do we get to specifics of what, right? And for who, right? So let me pick up some city priorities: mobility, health and education, housing, and what I would call urban ecology. Urban ecology is a space that I would bundle water, air, urban biodiversity, green spaces, and energy, right? And let's get to what are the opportunities to attract private capital. Mobility, electrification of energy, in that electrification of mobility is a long-term trend. And if you really look at, of course, there is conversation around batteries, manufacturing of EVs, but I think there is a huge core that's about fueling electrification of mobility. And that involves charging infrastructure, fast charging, and technologies that are actually at the core of it is computing and ability to write complex algorithms and so on. And we in India have an opportunity there, right? Let me get down to healthcare. Miniaturization of devices. Again, data and analytics and computing, in my view, would revolutionize low-cost healthcare delivery, right? That's an opportunity there. Let me go down to housing, right? There are lessons to be learned from, say, I was in 2018 with the deputy mayor of Vienna, right? And she was mentioning that the stock of public social housing was 62%. But they began building that stock from 1922 onwards, right? So is there an opportunity for us to create a PPP where you have a private participation in building up of public social housing, right? And I believe we can do much more in our construction industry. If you look at technology adoption, one of the McKinsey studies placed construction right above hunting and farming when it comes to technology adoption. There is significant headroom to adopt technology to do more with less. Can we build with 50% less resources for what we build to last 50% longer period of time? And can we build 50% faster? All of those are possibilities, right? So, so there are immense opportunity to finance climate for cities at the intersection of deep domain science, ICT, and market at scale. And C40, if technology and businesses are transferable across cities, then it just opens up so much more opportunity for businesses to come and play, right? So the crux is about careful choices and curation, right? And then bring in national and subnational catalytic facilities to accelerate private finance. Now, let me go on. Let's talk of also quickly about municipal financing, right? So we've heard of Indore having municipal corporation having launched what do you call first public issue of municipal bonds where retail participation is permitted because it's to what do you call finance a 60 megawatt of solar. So if your purpose and project is clear and fundable, you can attract a private finance. So let me take this forward. And, Pune Municipal Corporation launched its bond in 2017. But at the same time, a very little known or a very small urban, industrial local body called LCITA, which I was chairing in 2017, we were contemplating on raising municipal bonds. Our financial, credentials and ability was excellent. And taking from what Mr. Singh mentioned, LCITA is a case where functionaries, and finance is completely transferred to the industrial urban body. So one of the questions that we could ask possibly is about unlocking value. Can we disaggregate pockets from a larger urban agglomeration? Those can administer themselves well and possibly have better financial credentials to be able to raise private capital. If you're doing that, you're actually, it's like a large corporation listing part of its businesses to unlock value, right? The last recommendation that I would have is, I think it's time we looked at, you mentioned about technology and digital. I think it's time we looked at similar to what we call India Stack. What did India Stack do? India Stack the purpose was financial inclusion. And India Stack's claim is to have crunched the financial inclusivity of Indians, which would have happened over 46 years by 8 years, right? And can we look at a city stack? A city stack that is at the core of it would be a 3D map and a digital twin for the city. This actually helps system integrators to develop, and this is open and available for private to come and make use of. And there's a possibility for them to develop applications, and API can be developed on this platform. And these are the kind of, and has this happened? One of our, I think, G20 member countries, right? If you take the example of the city of Neom, has a subsidiary called Autonomous. The Autonomous purpose is they have come up with the digital twin for the city, and there will be many, many people who will build applications and services on the back of this. So is there a possibility of putting together a city stack similar to India Stack? Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think the last thing that I would want to say is, if we get, let me use, if we get NEETI, that is, if we get our policies, curation correct and selection correct, and if we use our, what we call in Kannada, Nipunata, that is innovation, and if we keep Nyaya, that is justice, central to what we do, I think we have a huge opportunity to bring in private capital to climate action in cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abbas and Hari. And, there were a number of very insightful things both of you said. And I think I have the difficult job of, bridging what you said, and taking this first session to conclusion, and then, of course, getting into the panel discussion later. So let me try and maybe bring both of that together. So I think since the morning, what all of us here have been, focused on and thinking about is, like, as cities become, in fact, the place where majority of the world's population and certainly Indian population reside, what does that mean really for, our social and economic progress? I think many times we talked about how the resilience of cities was going to be something that really defined our lives. The fact that when there are, weather risks, when there are disasters, the people most affected, I mean, at one level, the countries most affected are developing countries. At another level, the people most affected are those that are most vulnerable and can't afford to buy themselves out of the problem. And therefore, the fact that as we look at really improving and adding to city infrastructure needs, if we don't kind of look at that in a sustainable and climate friendly way, it will have consequences which will really affect lives of bulk of humanity. And I think, Hari, the point you made, really relevant one, is that while this is the problem that we grapple with, I think one of the defining features of our times is that technology is abundantly available. Solutions can be completely different from what we've looked at in the past. And how do we think of the basic life needs of every person? A clean air, clean water, a good house, a safe, secure housing, and at the same time look at carefully curating technology-driven solutions that can be completely outside of what we ever imagined in the past. How do we carefully curate these, show success, and then take these lighthouse projects to scale? And indeed, how can we maybe build the equivalent of the India stack, a city stack, which can help with this? I think the good news is there's some experiments like that already in progress at various of our educational institutions, and maybe we can get a head start on some of those ideas. But even as we kind of think about this a little bit more and think about capital and financing, what I'm hoping in the next 1 hour we focus on is the policy and the guardrails that it can provide for this development. I mean, that's the first. And just again, stringing together something we heard both from Dr. Singh and from Abbas, is that for policy and regulation to be really effective, I think we'll first have to start with, okay, what's the data on things? And therefore, can we be, more thoughtful about the kind of data we're going to need, and how do we build solutions on that data? And again, going back to what Dr. Singh started with, and I really love that point, is that change is not a linear path. You will not get the next step, which should have been ideally the next step. And therefore, how do you work around that and think creatively without just withholding resources? I thought that was such a fabulous point that, the Finance Commission didn't say, let's just withhold resources. Instead, they gave more, but they gave it now not as a, more as an incentive, as something for people to challenge themselves, cities to challenge themselves to change. I think the second thing which I hope we talk about in the next part of the session is the role of governments and how it's really central, for governments to take the lead on such investments and encourage the whole ecosystem to develop. And I take a lot of heart from the fact that, not only did the Joint Secretary in the morning say that at this point in time, he saw more conversation and more informed conversation about change than he has ever seen in the last 10 years. And the fact that even the Prime Minister actually talked about life, which is lifestyle and changes, which will help build a better environment. So I take comfort from the fact that both at government as well as at a society level, this conversation has started. Third, I do hope that we will learn from the shared global experience, and we had Abbas just now in the plenary. As well as we have Rajesh following up in the panel discussion, who will really bring the global experience, because sometimes in India, we get very consumed by the Indian experience. And here we'll have the benefit of, hearing both of them speak about what's happening, in other countries, what's working, what's not, and therefore, what should we double down on? And in a sense, the whole world as a global lab, really. Lastly, I guess it's really building that vibrant ecosystem that identifies the risks associated with, all of this funding coming in. And I've spent a lifetime in finance, and, it's always about expanding the universe of funders. You'll have some early converts, But then it's about getting more and more and more people into it and finding out who's comfortable with taking what risks. And therefore, as we look at, climate finance, it's really about growing the pool width and then deepening it so that people who are newer to the party can take the easier risks and people who have been there for a while can start taking and underwriting the more difficult risks. And two points that I took away, from Hari, what you and Abbas said. One is that, like, sometimes you might not change the ecosystem, but can we take maybe one small example and build on it? And basis what you said, Hari, I'm reminded of something that a public sector banker was sharing with me. He said there was a city in which there was really a constraint for good water treatment plants and things like that. And the city didn't have the resources to really fund it. And industry in that city actually got together and said, we will fund it because we know the payback on this project. And that's how it kind of came together. I thought it was a fabulous experiment in completely rethinking what we normally kind of think about in such things. Abbas, you made a really enormous point, which is that even if global capital is available to fund developing countries and their change, let's not forget the hedging risk. It can be something that completely wipes out any benefits that the capital brought to you. And therefore, as we think of global capital flowing into the country and supporting some of this, really need to think about the hedging risk as well. And therefore, in conclusion, as we kind of think about alacrity, I think Dr. Singh mentioned the momentum needed at speed to really drive this whole conversation on climate finance. I think the best part of it is the whole world is learning together. And it's really conversations like this, which U20 and C40 are enabling, which will help us to build consensus, build collaboration amongst very different stakeholders. And therefore, very last point, which, Abbas, you touched upon, is the feedback loop, that these conversations have to go out, result in some movement forward, and then there has to be an impact measurement which comes back into the next conversation and keeps it moving forward again in the right direction. So I know much was said and it was so much richness and thought, but thank you very much to all three of you. Really appreciate this. And Benji, over to you to introduce the panel.
I'd like to once again thank all the panelists on behalf of the organizers. I request you to just come forward. We'll take a group photograph.
Okay. Great.
So now we move on to the panel discussion. We have a very exciting panel who's going to further take this discussion forward. I would invite each panelist one by one. I would request you to please come up on the dais and take a seat. We first have Mr. Anand Iyer. He's the Director of Projects at Jana Urban Services for Transformation, and he's a technical advisor at Janagra. Anand has over 22 years of experience working across state and central government in urban development, private sector, consulting in land, infrastructure, and buildings. He also has experience in academia and practice in architecture and design, and now with civil society. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Rajesh Kumar Miglani. He's the Senior Climate Business Specialist and Climate Anchor, South Asia International Finance Corporation. He's based in New Delhi. He leads the development and implementation of IFC's climate change strategy and is part of the business development team that partners with financial institutions. Third, I would like to invite Mr. Dhruba Kiasta. He's the India Director, Climate Policy Initiative. Dhruva is currently works as the Director of Climate Policy Initiative, a global non-for-profit research and advisory institution working on sustainable climate finance. He has over 25 years of experience in credit rating, management consulting, investment banking, and international development financing, and has worked on project assignments in many Asian countries. Next, I would like to invite Mr. N. Srinivas, who's the Executive Director, Technical and Chairman, State Technical Committee, Smart Cities, KUI DFC. He started his career as an assistant executive engineer and presently is serving as the executive director at KUI DFC, where he manages smart city mission for all the 7 smart cities of Karnataka. In his long career spanning over 28 years, he has handled multi-spectral infrastructure projects in urban development, public works, water resources, ports, and rural development. I would like to invite our 5th and last panelist, Mr. Ashwini Bhatia. He currently serves as a whole-time member SEBI. Okay, Mr. Pradeep from SEBI is here. So I'll also invite Shilpa to please come and take over.
Hello? No. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Hello? No, I think he just changed that. But no, I think while we changed it, he changed it. Hello? Yeah, okay. Okay. It's great to get this discussion started, and I think I'm really pleased that we have a great mix of civil society, government, multilateral institutions, as well as the regulator over here. Let me start actually, Anand, with you. Hello, is this better? Yeah. Anand, can I start with you? Because Janagra has always, been at the forefront of municipal finance, at the forefront of, in a sense, the voice of the citizen. You have actually done a lot of work in the area of data, in the areas of actually getting city finances to come together in the city finance portal. The question to you would be really, what can cities do to ensure that this data, this availability of information can actually translate to access to finance? And maybe if I can, squeeze in a second question and then, have you kind of address both of them together, that if you were to think about 2 to 3 policies that can actually support cities to scale up access to finance, what would those be?
Right. Thanks. Thanks, Shilpa, and pleasure to be here. So it's a tough act if you got Mr. Singh first stress on the fiscal responsibility and the potential in cities. It's a tough act to follow because he's probably covered what you've said. But I'm glad you bring up cityfinance.in. I was just mentioning it to Abbas myself. It's a tremendous repository. It's something that I thought I'd never see. And the back-end work to make them comparable has been incredible. What we are referring to is cityfinance.in. It's on the ministry's website. Over 9,400 plus financial statements. And this from 3,000 plus cities over several years. And the credit rating and the, everything else, that borrowing capability, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a great thing that it's a start. But you're right, and you bring up the 2 core things that Janagra deals with. So I'll have to deal with your first question. The 2 areas that we are strong with, breaking up finance, and there are others here who will deal with finance coming in, but I got to deal with the house that the finance is coming into. So I got to say that I'll not deal at all with the merchant banking side and only with the municipal finance side of things where getting the house in order, getting books in order. It's been extremely tough. Getting comparable financial statements, they are all in different languages is a separate story. They're all booked in different heads. It's mayhem out there. And I'm talking financial statements which are audited. Budgets are completely another story. People seem to be banking or budgeting the same thing under different heads in the same state. So therefore, it's been a backbreaking effort, and we committed to it. Getting books in order, revenue augmentation. Mr. Singh Alzadi mentioned, he talked about valuation in property tax, etc. But before that comes enumeration. So get onto a GIS-based system. Most of us peg our user charges against the property tax instead of against the actual operating expenses. So first is enumeration, then comes valuation that he brought about, then is collection. And collection, the percentages are shocking. So, you bill only a portion of the properties that are in the city. Your collection efficiencies of what you build vary between 30 and 70%, 70 if you're very lucky, which means there's just an enormous pool that you're unable to collect. There are best practices, etc. But first is you bill, second is you remind, third is you collect in a way that it is easy for the other person to pay. And there are some experiments that Janaagra has done in terms of one door, one sati in Odisha, etc., where a single person who comes to you can collect a variety of things that you owe and things like that. And finally, this is important, and I don't think he touched on it, Dr. Singh, asset monetization. So there's a variety of assets, not just land. And somebody needs to just inventorize them and know what is it that you can actually get out of them. So revenue is not just the own source revenue is not just taxes, etc. On the expenditure management side, and here I'm going to come into I'm going to merge your questions in the interest of time, because 2 or 3 policies that you talked about, fiscal responsibility, budget management framework, FRBM, just necessary that a state just thinks about it and does this. So we keep talking realistic budgets, timely financial statements. When we chase some of our cities, if it's April today, I may be chasing the budget, the financial statement of last year for the better part of this year. And I may be chasing the budget for this year that should have been started for the better part of this year. It doesn't work like this. And, uniform accounting standards, and I'm sure they will appreciate any international accounting standards from IASB. The climate people will talk about climate disclosures, which also follows this. A variance check. So we got the annual State of Indian Cities survey that talked about over 70% of our cities have a 30% variance in what they budgeted. So obviously, when I tie this into the expenditure statement that I'm making, there is need for quarterly and half-yearly reforecasting. This is a common practice in corporate. It is completely, though you are a corporation and you audit yourself, there are bottlenecks. So therefore, there needs to be process re-engineering at that place and single windows. So here the stack can come in very well, because single windows can reroute in extremely agile fashion. And this has happened in building permits under the World Bank's ease of doing business format, but this can be taken much further, which means that the risk which is in delay can be subverted, and the risk which is in variance can also be taken care of. I would be amiss if I am Janaagra and I didn't talk about the second part, what cities can do. Chetan Bhai is here from Rajkot, and we were talking in the morning. Emani is here. Together, we put one person in there for a few years, and you've got to take your projects to the councillors, and you've got to take them to the elected representatives. Every inch of land in a city is deeply contested, owned, and looked at. Transparency, accountability, and the last one is always participatory. If you take them along with you, you de-risk yourself. And the catchword is ESG. We're all here under an E. There is an S that I hope I see more such events of, dining table as well as conference table. And then there is the G, the governance, which means your very questions is, unless you got the elected people on board with you, the governance side, then it becomes an ESG, robust. You're de-risking yourself. That's all I'm saying you're doing. In terms of the second policy, and I'll end with this, states really need to think about, it's okay to sit on a table here and talk about capacities and cities lack capacities, and Chetan Bhai, Nagpur, so many people here would tell us, usually the funding comes along, let's look at training and capacity building, which consists of a set of lectures. No, that's the capability side you're going in. The capacity itself is a mega problem. And it always falls into a recruitment stroke procurement kind of binary. Both have severe limitations. And they are under the law, they are limited. And if you look at the books, you know why recruitment is such a big limitation. A policy that needs to be worked on urgently is how do capacities quantitatively improve. So again, Janagra has worked in, I would recommend a municipal services cadre very strongly. It can start with the financial services cadre because that's the panel we are on. We worked on what's called a shared service model, where between departments for collection of charges, between cities, and then finally, of course, what everyone resorts to is outsourcing. But if you had a cadre that could equally serve within a district, make that a unit, serve the ULB strong and weak within that, maybe house yourself with the strongest ULB. That could be a good one. Hand-holding support is right, but it always comes through some TA. From the USA Fire D first bond in Ahmedabad to the Pune bond to the Rewa bond, there is always some TA which has helped it happen. This can't be forever. So somewhere I think we need to look at maybe an urban infrastructure development finance corporation taking the onus of saying, I will do the hand-holding support. All hand-holding support happens because the templates are set. Two policies, short time, no for the others. Thanks.
No, thank you, Anand. You really packed a lot into that short time. So, I think City Finance, and congratulations on that again, has really brought in this comparability of finance in a really good way, because like you said, how do you compare if it's reported under different heads? But maybe having done that, like you say, the next step is really about, actually, in a sense, improving the credit worthiness. I mean, City Finance gives you the data, but the next thing is bankability. And that kind of, beautifully brings in Dr. Singh's point along with what you said, that property tax can be really the fulcrum, on which credit worthiness can improve, and asset monetization as well. And completely agree with you that, in the end, it's about being participatory, because, and I love the point you were making about getting back to the citizen and getting back to the councillors, because, as surveys have released, have revealed that in the end, the councillor is also deeply interested in actually getting their electorate to be happy and having access to all of this. So some great points over there, but maybe moving on to you, Rajesh. IFC has been working on investing in cities, for a while. And from a MDB perspective, therefore, what do you feel could help in facilitating financing? What do you think is the biggest gap? And again, I'm going to add on the second question, so you get, a full 10 minutes to speak, is that besides green bonds and PPPs, what could be other financial instruments? And how do you think we can bring in other private players?
So thank you very much. So maybe, I'll set a little bit context before I answer a couple of questions. There was a World Bank report just a few months ago where they spoke about the huge financing needs in city space. It's around $840 billion, which they're saying between 2021 and 2035 comes out to $55 billion a year. While the actual deployment is just a quarter of this. And if I tell you the what's being deployed as of now, 76% is the fiscal transfer from the state and the central, 11% from the internal accruals, 10% from the sovereign lending from World Bank, ADB and all, and just 3% from the commercial banks and the PPP. So I think the challenge is how to scale up this, the private commercial financing. And this is actually we are discussing here. Now, another interesting data point is that the top 37 cities in India, their average commercial borrowing is just $9 million. So $9 million per city. While they have the ability to borrow, I would say more than $10 billion, right? So this is not happening.
Now, this is where the sweet spot is for IFC. And as you rightly said, we have been very active in city space. We have invested around $2.4 billion in 54 projects across 18 countries. And we have been, and this is where we want to create market in India around the private commercial financing. And we have been investing a lot of time. And there has been a concerted effort from our side, working with Mahua, working with DA, and our cities team. They just had one workshop in Visakhapatnam around this particular topic, and there are going to be 3 more by end of this year, where we really want to move the needle in this, and there is an opportunity for us to create market in this particular space. Now, why it is not happening? I think the challenge what we are facing, of course, you spoke about the revenue base, about the institutional capacity to interact with the investors, and all these challenges would remain. We are cognizant of that. But I think IFC is willing to take risk, right? But the challenge which we are facing is going to be around the pricing of the loan. If we lend the money to the municipality, I think pricing is going to become the challenge. We are very competitive, by the way, in the commercial sector. We have clients from with Mahindras, with Tatas, with SDFC and all. But on the city side, we may not be competitive. And the reason is the feedback which I got from my colleagues, and of course, I spent some time working with the couple of municipalities around 5-6 months to understand how they work and so on. So even if you look into the bond issuance which have happened in the last 5 years, most of the time it's subscribed by the SOEs, which are encouraged by the provincial government to subscribe. And as a result, the price discovery of the bond is, not that perfect. Yeah. So I think as long as the pricing of the bond and you have to involve the unrelated investors. If the SOEs are going to be involved and subscribe, you will not have the perfect pricing. So that will remain the challenge. And for investors like us, which will assume certain risk, right? We will take some LGD of around 35% and then price the loan. We are not becoming that attractive. So there have been instances of the private sector banks lending to the municipality, but again, the issue is they have some deposits, they have accounts, with these municipalities, so they can cross subsidize with the profitability which they make with the other business, right? If they are having 1,100 crore rupees from a municipality as a form of FDs, so they can take and then do some pricing which we will not be able to compete. So if we really want, in a long run, right, we need to diversify. We need to have investors. As a result, the liquidity will take place in the bond market. Otherwise, it will be a shallow market, no liquidity, and so on. So, so these are some challenges, but we are, quite committed to work in this space, to do 1 or 2 demonstration, and willing to put in, I would say, $1 billion in this space in the next 2 to 3 years. So that's what I can tell you. As far as your second question is concerned on what could be the innovative instruments. And so I understand there are a few cities which are in the process of developing the low carbon roadmap. And they have fairly good idea of, the action plan. They're fairly aware of the sustainability performance targets which they can achieve. So my suggestion to these forward cities, looking cities, would be to explore instruments like sustainability linked loan. And this is where investors like us are willing to provide incentives to cities who have the climate change action plan. They can agree to the predefined sustainability performance targets. So targets could be, for example, making 50% of their future stock as green affordable housing, right? So if they make this kind of a commitment, or if they say we'll reduce our greenhouse gas by 25%, they can take this advantage, and investors like us would be happy to, pay some greenium or the reduction in the interest rate. And at the same time, if they're not able to meet, then they have to, pay some kind of, I won't use the word penalties, but the interest rate will go up, the manner in which we decided to bring it down. So this instrument, already couple of cities in Europe and then Hong Kong, they have started exploring this. And IFC, we are seeing this interest not only in cities, but in other sector. In one of the manufacturing company in textile in southern India, based on a discussion with the CEO, he agreed that I'll get coal free. And we were able to give them this kind of incentive, company called Himmat Singha Textile. And likewise, we did our first SLL with Tata Clean Tech. They said we are going to double our business and reduce our greenhouse gas emission reduction. And as a result, the rates were very, very attractive. So this suggestion is for the cities where, the climate change action plan exists. They know they can achieve it. So this instrument, they can use it. Let me take a pause and yeah.
No, thank you for that, Rajesh. I mean, indeed, it's true that commercial finance is a small proportion. And like you said, it's not surprising because we're still figuring out how to, manage some of the risks that you talked about. I think the important point, though, is that someone like yourself is actually there, standing there with a fairly big, quantum of capital, which can be unlocked and which can be built upon. And I think the other interesting point you made is about how this capital can actually take some of the first risks, that other investors will not deal with. Price discovery, indeed, it's quite true that a lot of the bond markets actually end up in getting locked up, and therefore there is no liquid traded market. But beyond that, I think even as long as the subscriber pool doesn't go beyond what you said, state-owned enterprises, it's unlikely that it can become a vibrant market. And I think it kind of ties in with what Anand was saying, that we have to first improve bankability for more and more investors to come in. But indeed, the last thing is that some of the new innovative, means that you talked about. I mean, the fact that indeed you can reduce your interest rate if you have a certain proportion of, let's say, green housing. I think that's a fascinating concept and really, something I'm sure all of us would love to learn a lot more about as we go forward. But Dhruba, moving to you really, bankable projects do attract finance, but in your view, and you've seen this for a while, that we're just not getting there. What do you think, therefore, really should we do to unlock this? And how do you think that it can also become a priority for Indian cities and policymakers and city administration to think about?
Thanks, Shilpa. Thanks. Let me start with the Work for Climate Policy Initiative, and Anand, you grapple with that, cities.in. From that, budgets from the municipal disclosures from the states and the center, we take out climate finance investments report for what goes in mitigation and what goes in adaptation. So fully agree with you. And we have to necessarily use RTI many times to get what has happened. So this is where so you can refer to climate finance landscape for India. It's published in 2022. We try and do it every year, but that's a huge challenge. That's a huge challenge, and completely agree with this point. And coming back to my problem in these kind of sessions of unlocking private finance is I somehow start with disagreeing with private finance, commercial market finance. I don't think is the way forward. Very clearly, let me get down to start with what Dr. R.K. Singh said to start with. Abbas alluded to leveraging public finance. I'll come to that at a point. Couple of things, while completely agreeing with Dr. Singh's, I'll just add 2 points which he probably left out. Is one is very clearly in the 74th Amendment, 12th Schedule, Article 243, as you dig deep, is very clear that our fiscal federalism is not working, and therefore there were suggestions very clearly on that. So therefore, that brings you to the State Finance Commission and the importance of that. What was missed out, and it is there in the 15th Finance Commission, is predictability of intergovernmental transfers. And this will play out to municipal bonds. That's the unlocking. Predictability of intergovernment, it's not there. And the other thing which was getting, he was mentioning property tax even when he ended. The issue is the municipalities have got no own revenues other than property tax, and therefore it needs to be rationalized. Maybe other sources of revenue do need to come in. Coming back on the report which Rajesh mentioned, 840 billion, 2011 high-level expert committee talked about 560 billion. None of them have been met. So let's very clear. And it's only 2% or less than 2% which we are talking of. Having said all this background, one last data point is India's attempt to get private participation through PPPs. While I agree that's a way in terms of private participation through PPPs has gone down post 2015. It rose up. If you look at data between 2008 and the Finance Commission and the World Bank report also makes a point that urban municipal financing in India has shifted significantly to public finance and far less. And we have gone the other way around. Now onto climate. Cities climate action. We have mitigation. Cities not too much in control. But the primary investment that even this forum and this note talks of is what? Is urban infrastructure, built infrastructure, resilience, stormwater drainage, water, heat islands is what you are talking of. Waste management, and because I work in climate, I differentiate a little bit of emissions within the E, while water and pollution are important. But if I focus on emissions, let's understand very clearly that this is a clear case of market failure, and we do not see any possibilities of being able to create private business models in this. The market failure here, it's a local, but it's still a local public good problem. In a local public good problem, when there is heat, there is floods, there is storms, you're talking of urban disaster resilient infrastructure also. And the other day I was in CDRI session, we were talking about the same thing. Now, it becomes very difficult at times because the grain or the flow is towards unlocking commercial finance for climate action. Very clearly, the climate action required in cities will not be supportable by private finance. And there's an argument, and let's get back to basic economic constructs which were getting discussed in CDRI. You're creating, it's an economic benefit, it's a social benefit, it's an intergenerational equity. All of this benefits have to get captured, cannot be appropriated for private capital to earn returns. And therefore, even if you create a cess structure, the government will have to find a mechanism and therefore get back to appropriating the benefits and then give it back to private sector in order to invest that. So cities attempting, now I'll differentiate, and this is not my statement, it comes from the report which Rajesh mentioned, is when we talk of commercial finance, it is about money which will get returned back, which will get returned. And let's look at PPPs. What is happening? Let's understand very clearly that the PPPs are not, they will get paid back unless you have PPPs which are not annuity, which are not deferred revenue for the state. It is not commercial business model. Again, let's get back to bonds which are getting raised. The bonds will get paid back to the municipal own revenues only. In India, the surplus is there with maybe 25 municipalities at the maximum in a position to issue bonds. The rest of them are not, even the 126 smart cities are not. Now, therefore, the way forward in this is not to chase unlocking. Bankability is a project level issue, Shilpa, that's right. Bankability, we have a project level issue. If we can get a project or a PPP project bankable with user charges, with revenues, with project finance in place, yes, for true. But city as a whole for climate action, which is primarily adaptation and resilience, this trajectory of trying to unlock private finance is possibly a wrong direction very, very clearly, in my view, in terms of, and I face this across the world. And therefore, what is possible is, one, we need commercial finance is what is returnable. But when I talk market, it is at a price which is near the market, which is even more difficult because it will get related to risk, it will get related to rating. Commercial financing for some activity, yes, but needs to leverage on public concessional finance is what the structures are called blended finance. Now, which essentially means that if I have an equity investment, there is an investor willing to take 0 returns on equity investment or 5% returns compared to the market, and therefore commercial capital can come in. On the debt side, it therefore means that somebody stands back and essentially inverts what we from the financial sector understand, that a subordinate debt structure should have a higher interest rate. Now invert that structure in blending. Therefore, subordinate structure. I've had enough discussions with IFC, and IFC seriously disagrees, and IFC is wrong here very clearly, that subordinate structure, if you were to be doing blended, then that blending is higher risk proportional to the risk, or rather lower return proportional to the risk you take. IFC wants their capital to be blended, which is clearly should not the way forward. Now we need DFIs with concessional capital. We need philanthropy. We need public finance to pool in this part, which takes higher risk. India create its own in terms of, more importantly, the intergovernmental fiscal transfers. Municipal bonds will ultimately get paid back by municipal revenues, which will come in. Sorry, thank you. I'll end here.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I think you pointed out something really important, that as we look at climate, there are some things which will reduce future, maybe bad effects. There are some things which we need to do, which are already to take care of what we are dealing with. And I think just like you talk about, what we need to do, the kind of finance will flow from there. There are some things which are just not, fundable by returnable capital, and therefore we will need cities to use, their own money to manage that. But at the other end, maybe some of the future infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure that gets built can be used in a fully commercial way. And then there's a in-between land where maybe you have philanthropists who come in to look at impact bonds and even multilateral institutions. And in a sense, cities need to think about the whole gamut of actions and not just focus on one end. I think that's an important reminder. But maybe just going back to returnable capital, and we have Pradeep here with us representing SEBI. And I do know that SEBI has been doing a lot of work in the whole area of municipal bonds. And I think we are really excited to see how much change SEBI is driving in this space. So thank you for that, Pradeep. May I ask you to talk a little bit about SEBI's role in facilitating climate finance as a whole? And from your perspective, are there specific, regulations or frameworks that can be institutionalized to support this, and what could cause a paradigm shift?
Yeah, thanks, Shilpa. Before I start, there is something very interesting I would like to share with the audience. And we are in this place. This place is called Indira Nagar, I believe, right? So I first came to Bangalore in 1983. So I'm from Chennai. And I was a 5-6-year-old boy when I came to Bangalore. And we were put up in the house of one of our relatives or friends. So when I entered the house, and my father said, we're going to stay here for the night. And when I entered, I could see there was no fan in the room. So I was like, then I asked my father why there is no fan. Then at the moment, the landlady came in and she brought in a couple of blankets. And she said, you may need this for the night. And this was in July or August. And so I didn't know. I mean, that because coming from a city, I'm from Chennai, where we have 3 seasons. We call them hot, hotter, and hottest. And so coming from a city like that, so this was a new experience for me. But today, Bangalore is one of the largest purchasers of air conditioners in India. So this is just a matter of 30, 40 years, and we can see where we have sort of landed ourselves. So coming to, there's just a small anecdote I want to give you because it was perfectly suiting the topic which we are discussing. See, SEBI generally is an issuer agnostic regulator. That's how regulators have to be. But we have a regulation for bonds, we have regulations for equity. But around the year 2014, 2015, we realized that there is a category of an issuer which may perhaps need some hand holding. Maybe who perhaps would like to be shown that there is a segment of finance, there is a place from where you can sort of tap finance from. Because normally you look at the central government grant, you look at a state government grant, or you borrow from multilateral institutions. But there is also this huge segment called municipal bonds, which can be tapped. So we brought out, after a lot of discussions, we brought out the first municipal bond regulations. Interestingly, it did not take off because our ladder of inference was just the corporate. So a lot of things which were there in the municipal bond regulations were sort of catered. We're sort of catered to the corporate and probably were a little different for what a municipality would be like. Because see, now a lot of things like transparency, etc., are sort of getting injected into municipalities, which was not the case perhaps 7 or 8 years back. So we did not have the necessary traction. So in 2019, we revisited the entire municipal bond regulations. For want of a better word, I'll permit me to use the word diluted. So we sort of got into sort of catering it to sort of diluted into to ensure that municipal issuers were sort of how they would be able to tap the municipal bond markets. And then there was some traction. Afterwards, again, it petered off. So this particular year, in the beginning of this year, towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, we embarked upon a nationwide outreach program. We were very surprised to know that many municipalities were not even aware that a municipal bond framework exists in India. So that led us to believe that, okay, because we made a very small beginning. And now we are going to each of the regions, like we started with North, we went to South, we're going to East. So what we try to do is that we are trying to bring the credit rating agencies, the merchant bankers, the people who are investing, the investors. We are also bringing people like Janagraha, Munify, so many people together in one room. So that, because as a regulator, my job is not to favor someone. My job is to lay down a path whereby the investor and the investee meet, right? So we also found that the municipalities were probably at loss of information. So we have brought a new repository. The repository can be accessed with just one QR code. And and this is the first time we are doing for any issuer. It starts right from what do you want to do? Who are the people whom you have to meet? And we also have things like what are the even sample agreements, which you normally don't find on SEBI's platform, is a regulator platform, because it is sort of catered. We wanted to handhold municipal corporations. These things have been a success. And recently we have been getting a lot of calls from municipalities for green bonds, and which we were very happy to, because in a way, if you look at most of the projects of most municipalities, they are green in a way, right? In some way, sewage or water treatment or solar power for that matter. Recently, SEBI revised its green bond framework. And it's probably one of the few countries. See, in a green bond framework, there are two types. One that has got granulated taxonomy like Europe, which becomes a little too difficult to comply with, and probably might not be appropriate for a developing country like India. The second one is you take a principle-based approach, like the IOSCO has done. It has sort of adopted the ICMA's definition of a green bond. What we have done is we have sort of, even sort of customized that for India, because as India, what happened in COP26 was India and China were able to convince the other nations that you have to sort of phase down, fossil fuels rather than phase out, because you have to keep everyone on the same plane, and chalk and cheese are not exactly comparable. So in this case, so what we did, we revisited the definition of the green bond framework also. We are the first country to introduce the concept of blue bonds and yellow bonds. Now, blue bonds are largely to do with maritime related issues, water related issues. And we found that there is perhaps even in the next few months, we may even find the first blue bond issue by a municipality, which is a very heartening thing to do. Sometimes a lot of, you also have to wrap the chocolate properly, because a wrapper also counts, right? Sometimes. So we have brought in the concept of yellow bonds. And yellow bonds are, as you know, as the name implies, it's for solar power. Recently, we were just talking about Reva and other places. And we believe there's a lot of traction on that count also. And very uniquely, recently India came out with the sovereign bond, green bond definition, where it adopted the ICMA framework. But we have added one more thing, again, keeping in mind India as a developing nation. We have added the concept of a transition bond. Now, transition bonds are those bonds which help you to move from carbon intensive to carbon neutral projects, right? So, and if you look at it, municipal projects, most of them fit like a glove to all these things. And we have brought this project, and recently we had the first issue of green bonds, first public issue of green bonds in India by a municipality. And we have been getting more calls. So we believe that all these things which we have sort of embarked upon, and particularly the last 1.5, 2 years, particularly the outreach program, will sort of sensitize municipalities to sort of tap this avenue of finance, because this is something in certain countries we also found the local public from a particular municipality. Like, for example, if I am from Bangalore, I take pride in investing in the municipal bonds of Bangalore because I have in a way sort of contributed, and I'm even willing to go get away from that greenium. And I'm like people are talking about, I'm even willing to contribute to the greenium by taking away a lesser percentage because I have that altruistic notion that I have contributed to the development of that particular city. So this is something which we have started, and I thought I'll sort of highlight. Thank you.
Thanks, Pradeep. I think both Anand and others had touched upon the need for city government's capacity to go up, and it's wonderful to see the lead role played by SEBI in actually building capacity across states, and at the same time, as we've been observing, also to make things simpler for access to this mechanism. But in the interest of time, and I think it's really great that you have the last word on this, Mr. Srinivas, because in the end, city and state governments do have an important role to play. In fact, the most critical role to play. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you feel subnational governments can play a role in enabling access to finance, and what help is needed by such governments in making that happen. Over to
you. Thank you, Shilpa, for calling me last, so that I had a privilege of hearing all of them, and I tried to shape my response so that I could at least address one issue which they have raised, each of them. So when you say what is a subnational government, I would like to say that in the Indian context or in the state context, the subnational government will consist of the state government, the urban local body or the city corporation, and also an equally important role by the district administration, which is led by the deputy commissioners of the district. So when you see the competencies available with all these three entities, there is a huge disparity, or there is a huge variance in terms of competencies, in terms of the decision-making abilities, as well as their exposure to these ideas of climate financing or climate action, financing the climate action in the cities. Because till now, after the 74th Amendment in 2014, as Mr. N.K. Singh was referring, we have been just shelling out some devolution of funds to the urban local bodies. They are trying to make some sense out of it and trying to create an action plan to cater to their city's core necessities, like water, sanitation, or some infrastructure in terms of roads. But if you really ask me whether it has been linked to the climate action, maybe I have to admit till now that it has not been a very good attempt, or it may not be even a comparable attempt. So in this context, so I think we need to look into going ahead by creating competencies in each of these entities to fill in these gaps as to how to address this climate action, and how do we bring in the finance for this climate action in the Indian cities or in the state per se. So in this regard, I just jotted down a few points which I thought I will share with you all of. Is the only one thing is that, yes, we do have certain frameworks, certain programs, or certain amendment acts which are aiding the municipalities or the municipal corporations of the state to discharge their duties towards the citizen in terms of infrastructure development. But there is always a improvement which is required in such to make it contemporary and to bring in this climate action points into those acts and amendments as well as the guidelines. So this is a first need which I feel as a state I am responsible that we need to do something about these amendments and other things. In this regard, I would like to just tell, I would like to link my experience with the Smart Cities mission, which I'm handling,
So we commissioned the CRISIL for making a study in 3 cities in Karnataka, the Belagavi, Davangere, and Hubli, Dharwad. And to just add to Mr. Dhruva, where he was telling that the private finance cannot be a panacea for all climate action. It is the city's inherent capacity which needs to improve in increasing its own revenue. So in that aspect, we commissioned CRISIL, and we found there is a huge potential for the Indian cities or the Karnataka cities, at least the first tier cities, where we have about 11 city corporations, including Bangalore, to increase their own source revenue to a great extent through value capture financing tools. So we have identified, as Mr. Singh was rightly referring, the property tax. The property tax base, even in Bangalore, if you see, it is always linked to the guidance value of some X date or some X year. So the first and foremost thing which we need to do is we need to link it to the current guidance value or the market value, if it is really possible. But again, there is a catch of the political acceptance for those changes or radical changes, I would say. So similarly, we have a impact fee, which we can definitely levy on certain cities where we have invested a lot of money in terms of smart cities mission or the Amrut mission, where we have pumped in so much of money so that the value of the area which has gone up in terms of sale of property or the price of property. So there may be some impact fee which we can definitely collect, which will augment the city's resources. We also have certain other levies and surcharges which we can look into to levy whenever a city gains from the huge investments which are made either by the government itself or through the externally aided projects. Coming from the Karnataka Urban Infrastructure Development and Finance Corporation, we greatly cater to the city needs towards water and sanitation projects and also certain infrastructure projects by getting loans from ADB, World Bank, and other aiding agencies. So we are definitely putting a lot of capital into the city, which the city has to convert itself into a revenue. So that model, I think we need to bring in to make a city sustainable whenever we are talking of making certain financial provision towards climate action. So in this regard, I think the first and foremost would be to create a city climate action plan, which is specific for the city. Because in Karnataka itself, we have such a great variance in terms of needs of the city. We have a Kodagu where we are off late seeing huge landslides affecting the life of the people, and the investment which is required to bring back the Kodagu to its original pristine nature is very difficult. Similarly, when we go to the coastal side, we have a huge issue of the sea erosion affecting our land, and the reclamation of land in such areas is a huge requirement. Similarly, when you come to the plain areas like the central part of the Karnataka, the requirement of city in terms of climate action plan is different. So a city level specific action plan has to be evolved. And for this, I think the state has a great role in engaging institutions like Janagraha or any other good reputed institutions to have a city level specific action plan for climate action. And what is essentially required is the participatory decision making, I think, which I was referring. And we have to sustain and we have to work with the elected body in a city corporation. So there is no other way we can get around and get our projects into a success. So I think that participatory should not only stop at the city council level. In the Smart Cities mission, we had a city level advisory forum, which consists of all the think tank of the city, the senior bureaucrats, the people from the civic society, from the NGOs, who are able to contribute to the ideas for the city's development. So I think that also should be emulated in our climate action plans also. And as he was telling, measurement is the important thing. We need to know what is actually need to be done in a city and how do we measure it in terms of progress whenever we are trying to infuse a lot of money into this climate action plan. So the best part would be to invest to avoid the future climate adversities. So that will be great, because in when I was working in my previous tenure, we had put up this advanced early response systems into the dams in many parts of the state. In about 27 dams, we have installed this advanced warning system of floods, which we were able to predict properly the warning whenever we leave excess quantity of water during huge heavy monsoon, and we will be able to relocate the people into safety with a good floodplain mapping. So the same thing we were trying to do it for the Bangalore city also, when Bangalore experienced the flooding in some areas some years ago, even the last year also. So I think investing in such technologies and technology enabled solutions should go a long way in taking good climate action plans. So when you ask me what are the things that city or the state can do further to bring in finance into this climate action plan, I was just thinking about what do we need or what are the core pillars for this climate action plan. So I thought there are about 3 or 4 which we need to, any city essentially has to look into. The first one will be the energy system. In this case, in smart cities, we have been fairly successful to address this issue in terms of energy efficiency. We are able to get the PPP partners in at least 4 to 5 cities of the smart cities, wherein this entire street lighting system has been taken up with the LED lighting system through a PPP model. And we are fairly successful, and we have already completed in one city, in city of Tumkur, and the city of Davangere and Shimoga are following in terms of completion. So the other way of the other instance is that this solar on the rooftop of the government buildings, we are able to attract some participation from the PPP partners in this regard. And also we have a solar project on the water body in Tumkur. We have a huge water reservoir there. So we have been able to attract a PPP partner to come in and do a solar project for us at the Tumkur also. So PPP has been a good experience for us under the Smart Cities mission. But as it was rightly said, municipal bonds is one of the proposition which we tried to bring in during the Smart Cities mission. We had the credit rating done for city of Mangalore and Mysore, but unfortunately due to the inherent resistance of the city councils saying that they are not ready at this point of time because they have been bogged down with a lot of projects which are already going on in the city, they were not ready to take this risk. So unfortunately we couldn't go much ahead in the municipal bond, but we are always want to try that angle also. So the other thing what I would like to take up is the methane abatement in the cities, because we all know that solid waste management is a huge issue in any city, along with the sewerage and effluent treatment plants. So this methane emission in the cities has to be tackled in an efficient way. Till date, we are not able to very holistically address this issue. We have been trying to build up a lot of landfills. We are trying to do some composting. We are trying to do some waste to energy plants. We are trying to do some biomethanation, but somehow they are all stuck in the system. I don't know what to say, but we are not able to do much about it. The ray of hope is we are trying to get one waste to energy plant in Biddi, which is being done by the Karnataka Power Corporation Limited, which is ready for commissioning now. So that will be the most probably the first successful venture in this waste to energy plant. So I think that is one sector where we need to really look into when we talk of bringing finance to the climate action in the cities. And of course, we need to cope up and restore and protect our natural capital in terms of urban greenery projects, or we need to avoid this land erosion due to sea and also this landslide and other issues. And we have to preserve our city landscapes by creating some pedestrianization projects or some placemaking projects whereby we give back to the citizens their spaces in the city to make their livability more enjoyable in the city. I think these are some actions which I just jotted down in a hurry to just share with you all. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivas. I think you nicely tied together what everybody had said. And, the word that came to my mind, it's a Sanskrit word, tyaktvotisht, and which means you can only yourself pick yourself up. I mean, that's kind of the loose translation. And I think what you said after hearing everybody is that in the end, it's for cities to really rise up and, pick themselves up. And you said build competencies, build action plans, build consensus, and move forward. I think with that, we started a bit late, so I'm going to take your permission to maybe, invite a few questions. So we'll take a couple of questions, and Abbas, I think you have the first one.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
So thanks to the panel for a great discussion. I just wanted to make 2 or 3 points sort of building on what the panelists said. So first of all, we heard a lot about property tax. I think there's a reality check that needs to be put in here. I worked in China for 12 years. China has been trying to put in a property tax for the last 25 years without success. So I think economists all agree that property tax is a great tax. Problem is politically, it's very hard to do. And in fact, Anand, you mentioned some very interesting examples of how cities in India have done it. I think it will be good to share that because, again, everyone agrees it's a great idea, but to put it in place is very, very hard politically. That's one. Second, I think I just want to second Anand's point on land, which is that, and I think my friend Rajesh will not like me saying this, but we talk about these municipal bonds and borrowing and all, but the truth is that the vast majority of Indian municipalities will not borrow and should not borrow. So they really need to rely on other sources of revenue. And for that, they're sitting on very, very valuable land, which they have no idea even of what the inventory of land is. So one of the lowest hanging fruit is just to do a land inventory in municipalities. Just find out what is the land, what is being used, who owns it. And there's a very interesting experiment in the city of Copenhagen. Again, Denmark is not exactly a model for India, but I just want to mention it, which is that the city created a special purpose vehicle, and they essentially transferred all the land to that special purpose vehicle. And it's professionally managed by a commercial real estate manager who knows how to extract value from land. And again, it's not a model for India, but it's a very interesting experiment that we should consider how to monetize land. And if you look at China, again, the way they have done their infrastructure funding is largely through land, by monetizing their land assets. So I thought I'll just put these two together. Thank you.
Unless you want
So, first of all, thank you for giving opportunity to a municipal employee to speak something on this dais. I am working with municipalities for around 25 years, and I've worked as commissioner, CEO, and mission director. Is nothing to praise myself, but to give context of what I might be asking. The language that municipalities speak is very different than what is spoken by such forums. And that's probably the reason why the implementation and execution is very poor. So, of course, I must thank the SEBI representative, also the QIDFC, for putting that ideas into language that we could comprehend and correlate. Secondly, I think the broader framework of city GDP, city economics, and municipal taxation is not taken into consideration. And that's the reason why a city like Mumbai, for example, if it has GDP of around 3-4 lakh crores, collects property tax not even 1% of it. Secondly, as Jha sir said, that talking only of property tax is not going to be effective, and we will have to probably lobby of giving shares directly to the ULBs from the GST. So that's the only flexible tax of income, and property tax is a direct tax, and therefore any rises of that is going to create issues. Most importantly is the services that municipalities offer are not economically viable. And of what I know of the Detroit example, a very famous example of Detroit, of which the city going burst financially because of the loan it had raised on the underground drainage system, number one. Number two, most of the Chinese cities and the local government financing vehicle companies they have a uncatered loans of around $5 trillion. And therefore, when we are talking of private financing by way of bonds of municipal project, we will have to keep in framework the broader issues of peculiarities of Indian situations. Fiscal imbalance in India will have to be removed to whatever possible extent, or to make any private capital financing possible. So, I'm sorry, it was more of a monologue. I thought I should be sharing the municipal side also in this deliberation. Thank you.
Maybe we take these last two and then close it.
I am Architect Neelam Manjunath. I'm the CEO of Center for Green Building Materials and Technology, and I'm also running Mansadam Architects, a more sustainable kind of architecture practice for the last 38 years. I had a small I think taking from the same thing about how the municipal authorities, they provide services like water. So the money that comes from the water, the people, what they are provided at, I think 7 rupees or 9 rupees or something like that. Now there is another climate action that we talk about is rainwater harvesting. And the amount of money that you get out of doing rainwater harvesting and getting that water and doing all that is very minuscule in your water bill. And so it doesn't promote action, climate action, of actually trying to reach that water security by individual person at his house, which would have been a way to do things because of the way the services are being provided, which the water we get from Mysore and all the way, and is subsidized to such an extent that it makes municipalities think itself, unsustainable economically. And I think similarly, there are many other things. So there could be a model where the minimum amount of water which needs to be provided to a person or something, that may be at that price, which is like a basic need. And then further from there, probably it could be like slabs. So you consume more, you pay more. This was just a suggestion and an observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice.
Good afternoon to everyone. Myself, I am Vinay Kumar, working with Visakhapatnam Smart City, MA and UD department. So first of all, it's very nice to have a great discussion about this municipal financing and make it a sustainable way. And basically, if you look at having my experience, just I want to share a few things with you. First of all, the municipal services are the most essential for every citizen. And especially if you look at these things, they were highly subsidized. All the services, if you look at sanitation, water supply, underground drainage, or whatever be the thing. And at the same time, the satisfaction levels are also not to the expectation. So where the gap is that especially they are not able to meet the standards as well as the return for the service what the urban local bodies are extending. So they need to go a lot of thought into this and how to make it sustainable. Suppose I am basically deals with water supply systems and all. They were all highly subsidized, as one of my colleagues has also put it. And for Visakhapatnam city, it is a little bit sustainable because there is an industrial water supply. And from the industry revenue, we are able to meet the domestic. So 80% revenue that comes from the industries and 20% is only from the domestic sector. So that need to be a balance. And also there, a certain policies need to be made. Though it is very hard that sustainable to make it sustainable, there should be certain policies. And so that like telescopic rating and bulk, semi-bulk and industrial, like that some need to be done. And nearly in comes to the sewerage sector, underground drainage sector, they were highly subsidized. Almost in any city, in most of the Indian cities, actually in our cities, 1/3 of the water tax, which is not at all viable. And also most of the cities are not covered with underground drainage. The infrastructure costs are very high. And whereas the collection efficiency is not at all meeting to that. But the service is most essential because unless we treat the this brackish water and all, we are polluting our cities, rivers, everything is getting. So where is the balance? And that is a highly cost intensive investments are required. So there should be some policies. What I mean is that all the sectors, bureaucracy, technocrats, as well as the polity, all need to be included and there should be some drastic policies need to be looked at because under smart city mission, a lot of things are getting in and where the technology is helping to solve most of the solution. So technology is the only solution through which we can make certain decisions and solve all this problem. When it comes to green energy and promoting solar, clean air, climate change, all of these are relatively new areas and very essential areas. But when basic needs are not able to meet, then how to go about the investments that we are going to attract? Then when it comes to the changes in the municipal sector like policy changes, property tax collection, vacant land tax collection and all, they were also, see, one way urbanization, cost of lands are getting very high. And when private sector is thriving very much on the housing, then why local bodies are not able to get sustained? Because most of the lands are government owned, but they are not sustainable. So that means there is some great thought need to go into these issues. And this platform has rightly pointed out and brought so many issues which enlightened us and sensitized us also. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was some really great insights that we heard just now. And I think we can agree that it is indeed complex. This is maybe, one of many conversations that all of us need to engage in. But maybe the thing we all agree is it's time now and we need speed. I think that's maybe uniformly agreeable. With that, I want to thank all of you for joining us in this conversation, and maybe we head out to lunch, and I think there's much to discuss over lunch as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think before all the panelists leave, request that you come forward for a photograph. And I also like to especially thank Shilpa for doing such a great job as the session chair and moderator. Thank you so much. We'll convene back at 2 p.m. back in the hall for the next session on resilience. Yeah. Yeah, and lunch is being already served on the terrace. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.